Good morning, Dan and Amy. We spoke with Kenosha Congressman Bryan Steil a couple weeks back when Kenosha was under siege with rioting and looting. And he stands for re-election as a member of the House every 2 years. So he's up in November, and he's just released this new ad.
Hi, my name is Jason. I've served as a police officer in the Kenosha area for over 20 years. For the men and women like me who serve in law enforcement, this has been a challenging year in a lot of ways. We've faced calls for defunding our departments. We've witnessed our fellow officers be physically attacked, shot at, and in the worst case, killed while serving their fellow citizens. Despite all of these challenges, we knew we could count on Congressman Bryan Steil, because Bryan always stands up for local law enforcement. 2 years ago, I voted for Bryan Steil because I knew he backed the bad. This year, when we needed him most, Bryan was there for us, delivering critical additional resources for Kenosha and showing up to thank the men and women who serve our community every day. I know Bryan Steil is fighting to keep our community safe. He has our back. On Tuesday, November 3rd, please join me in voting for Bryan Steil.
I'm Bryan Steil. I approve this message, and I ask for your vote.
Paid for by Steil for Wisconsin, Inc. Approved by Bryan Steil.
And that's not the only message emanating from Kenosha. Kenosha Sheriff David Beth has an op-ed in the USA Today. I saw firsthand the support, gratitude, and steadfast resolve our president holds for the law enforcement community. The president arrived with a plan to provide the critical resources needed to keep our community safe. His swift and bold response to support our law enforcement family and my community made it clear that he's the strong leader Wisconsin and America needs. It's also why I'm proud to endorse President Trump for re-election this fall. It's not just me. 38 other Wisconsin sheriffs have also endorsed the president. President Trump is backing the blue, and we are proud to back him. David Beth, Kenosha County Sheriff. For more on what's happening north of the Cheddar Curtain, we're pleased to be joined by Bryan Steil, representative for Wisconsin's Fighting First Congressional District. Bryan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
With what happened in Kenosha and the sort of response President Trump and you too are getting from law enforcement, I mean, has public safety now risen to the top of the issue matrix in terms of what constituents in your district are thinking about as they vote early or head to the polls on November 3rd?
I think public safety is in the top three with keeping us healthy and getting us back to work in the state of Wisconsin. But I think it's very obvious that there's a big distinction between the far left and where Republicans are on this issue, where the president is on this issue. Is we saw in Kenosha, our Democratic governor in Wisconsin failed to act. He failed to send the needed resources that Kenosha needed. The president, I called him. The president answered my call. He stepped up to the plate. He delivered the resources, reestablished public safety, demonstrated leadership, and I think the voters are going to reward leadership on November 3rd.
And what did Biden accomplish by visiting Kenosha?
Not much other than he wanted to get there after he saw the president come. I flew in on Air Force One with the president. We landed in Waukegan because Kenosha, obviously, right on the state line. I'm telling you, as we drove through northern Illinois, people were standing out there waving flags, saying thank you to the president. It continued as we went through Pleasant Prairie and then into the city of Kenosha. The response that he received, and I was with him in the motorcade, was overwhelming in support of the president. It was a great sight to see.
Well, did Biden even meet with business owners whose place establishments were looted or burned to the ground?
He talked to a very small number of people. The enthusiasm and support for him wasn't there. Yeah. I think what we saw is the president demonstrating great leadership, and Biden was previously hiding in his basement. Not that different than what the Wisconsin governor was doing at a period of time when Kenosha needed help.
Since you mentioned Air Force One, you got to fly in Air Force One. I know President Trump is a teetotaler, but are you allowed to have a cocktail when you travel with the president? I mean, do they have?
What about on the way home?
Well, I mean, do they have service? Do they have a meal and beverage
and
service?
Peanuts,
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
It is world-class service. I would say our entire flight out, I sat next to actually Attorney General Bill Barr. And our entire time was a working meeting around a conference table talking about what we need to do to help Kenosha. But I am assured that you could have gotten that. I admittedly took a box of M&Ms, but that was about as exciting as I got on that trip.
Presidential seal on those M&Ms?
Exactly. I got
Yeah.
that for my mother, and I don't know if she's listening, but that's her Christmas present.
Very
Oh,
nice.
there you
Very
go.
nice.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about something else that's going up, happening in Kenosha that not a lot of people here know about. You had nearly 300 Kenosha teachers call in sick last week, so it's forcing 7 schools to transition to online learning. Isn't that a breach of contract? And what's going to happen with those teachers? Could they possibly get fired?
They need to look into that. That is so frustrating. I spoke to so many parents who woke up in the morning assuming that their child was going to school. They had plans. They had to get to work. They had, operations to run. People are depending on them. And then to wake up and to find out that there was an organized sickout is beyond frustrating. And it reinforces this need to me of the importance of having in-person education, in particular for our youngest children. Maybe different for a high school or senior, but very important. You're thinking 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, 2nd graders. This is such a critical time, and the surprise where they just all did it together without giving people notice, with nothing, just really left people high and dry. And there needs to be an investigation as to how that played out.
In 2016, about 135,000 cheeseheads voted by mail. The projection this year, 1.8 million. How concerned are you about mail-in voting, the proper processing, and an expeditious counting of ballots in Wisconsin?
Every state is different. Wisconsin has a pretty good system. Is it perfect? No, but it's a pretty good system. We have voter ID, so you need to have an identification when you vote. That includes people that want to vote absentee. We have 3 ways to vote in Wisconsin. You can vote absentee, you can vote in person early, or you can vote on the day of. We have a pretty good public record system, checks and balances on this. Anytime you get an absentee ballot in Wisconsin, it's a public record. You can look it up on the website, myvote.wi.gov. Is it perfect? No, but we're not going to have the problems in Wisconsin that I think some of these other states are, that just mailed ballots to everybody on their list. In Wisconsin, you still have to request a ballot. I feel confident that we're going to have the integrity in the system that we need. I think we're going to be able to count these somewhere yet on election night before it gets too late. We'll have everything tabulated, and I feel reasonably confident talking to election officials in Wisconsin. And I also feel good that President Trump's going to win the state.
Well, that's encouraging on both scores. But there is still this pending litigation. There was an extension to the absentee ballot deadline that has been halted by a appeals court, so that's still being litigated.
Yes, this is where these activist judges just drive you bonkers, and why President Trump's pick to the Supreme Court is so great. Somebody that just enforces the law, doesn't make the law. We had one of these federal judges in Wisconsin come up and rewrite the rules of the election, saying you could turn your ballots in and they could arrive after Election Day. That's not what the law says in Wisconsin. The federal judge got overturned by the 7th Circuit in Chicago, correctly so, saying the law is the law. There's plenty of time to vote in Wisconsin. You can vote today if you want to.
Right.
There's plenty of time. Let's not rewrite the rules. And if we are going to rewrite the rules, it's not going to be a federal judge. It's going to go through our state assembly, our state senate, and be signed into law by the governor. This is where it just reinforces the importance of the president's pick of Amy Coney Barrett to be on the Supreme Court, that we have non-activist judges, people that just apply the rule, the facts to the law and get the right result.
Since you're in a swing district in a swing state, what are you hoping to hear? What do you think President Trump needs to deliver for your constituents, for Wisconsin residents tomorrow, in terms of continuing to move the state in the direction you think it's going, which is his column?
I went and spoke to a lot of people this weekend talking about the importance of this election. I heard time and again, I think it's really important that the president lays out really clearly what he's accomplished, because the mainstream media doesn't want to tell you that. He needs to go out and talk about how he put forward trade agreements that worked for farmers and workers, like USMCA. That's the rewrite of the Canada-Mexico trade agreement. He needs to go out and talk about how he reinvested in the military so that we're negotiating from a position of strength, which is getting us peace agreements between Israel and their allies. He needs to go out and talk about how he put forward tax reform that drove one of the best economies we had seen before we got punched in the face by coronavirus. If he goes out and advocates the case of saying, here's what I promised you, here's what I did, and here's what I'm going to do in the 4 years ahead, I think he wins this debate hands down. I'd love to see him stay on substance and lay out the case intellectually for people, because not everyone understands and appreciates what he's delivered for us.
What would the message be, your recommendation on COVID? Because this is an area where the Democrats clearly think they have an advantage. They want President Trump to be forced to talk about COVID as much as possible. How would you encourage him to address the topic of the handling, where we're at and where we're going, just as on those other matters?
He has to hit that in open, honest, and head on. He's got to lay out the case and explain what he did early on, like shutting down travel from China to the United States, ramping up the private sector to get PPE so our nurses and doctors had the equipment that they needed, the ramping up of testing, where we have one of the biggest testing regimes in the United States in the world. And then we need to recommit ourselves to getting ourselves to a vaccine and then making the plan to deliver that. That's in process. The federal government's making great strides on that. I feel confident we're going to be to a vaccine before too long. But then ultimately, we're going to defeat this virus. And then the question is, who do you want to rebuild the United States economy? And the president, Republicans built one of the strongest economies we had seen in generations. And that's who you want to rebuild it again, because we got to get everybody back to work. We got to get everybody a job that wants a job. And we got to go on offense talking about the economic opportunities that this administration poses and will allow us to reap the benefits of.
He is Bryan Steil, Congressman from Wisconsin's 1st. Bryan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
AM Woodland and Lots Custom Carpentry would like to take a moment to show their support and stand up for our police, fire, and all first responders. Thank you for your service, especially in these difficult times. Know that the AM Woodland families are praying for you every day. They believe that when first responders get home safely, they should be able to enjoy their home inside and out, and encourage you to call AM Woodland and Lots Custom Carpentry to build your piece of paradise at a much-deserved discount. From patios to pergolas, outdoor kitchens and fire pits to remodeling and painting projects. Count on the AM Woodland and Lots Custom Carpentry teams to be there for you to beautify and make your home everything you've always wanted it to be. Local, family-owned businesses are so important for our communities, and your support is truly appreciated.
AM Woodland Outdoor Design and Lots Custom Carpentry, proudly serving Lake, McHenry, Northern Cook, and Kenosha counties. Visit amwoodland.com or call 847-224-2167.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life